we talked about time technically previously. It was right up here when I talked about the schedule that Pablo and Claudia had for school. Specifically, I was going to talk about two things when it came to time. You have numbers down at the bottom, which is the page I just left off on. We're going to come back to those too. But when it comes to telling time, there are a few things you got to remember. In Spanish, like you know, and I haven't shown you yet exactly what I'm talking about because this is just like an old rule that you hopefully remember. Spellings are always changing, right? You change A's, you change O's, you change S's. This is going to be one of those cases. You're going to be talking about time, so like you're going to be talking about numbers. They're not exactly going to be changing for A's and O's because, like, for example, this number 8 will always be spelled 8 like that. That's fine. But you are going to be talking about plural changes. So this is going to be kind of weird because we're not used to it in English. Depending on the time that you're talking about, you will change the way that you say certain words. Like it is, or the words at. Like at 7, I have to wake up. Or it is 8:31 if you can see on my computer right now. So based off of the specific time that you're talking about, you will change the word that you say for at 7 o'clock I have to wake up, or it is 7 or 8:31 or whatever time I said. And this is what I mean by changing the spellings. All of these times, from math all the way to history, are multiple hours. So for example, he has something at 7. That's 7 hours, right? That haven't happened and he's still doing stuff. In this case, he woke up, he probably showered, ate, whatever, and now he's in class at 7 o'clock. So because it's 7 and it's not 1, right? It's more than 1. It's 7. You say a las. And if you notice this word here, las, if you can kind of see me moving it, maybe I can highlight it for you. Right here has an S because it's 7 o'clock, more than 1. Same thing for the science class. It's 8, right? It could be 8, 8:01, 8:20, 8:52, it doesn't matter, but it's 8 something. So you still say las because it's more than 1. It's 8. For English, it's 10 or 10. It's more than 1, right? So it still says las. For art, it's 12. It's more than 1. It still says las. History, again 12, so that hasn't changed, more than 1, so it says las. But look at Spanish. Spanish is at 1:30. The numbers for the minutes don't matter. What matters is the hour. So because it's 1, it could have been at 1 o'clock, 1:05, 1:12, 1:20. It doesn't matter the time. But because it's 1 something, I cannot put the S here. If you look at where it's highlighted right now, barely, it says la, no S, because my time says 1. If I had said that Spanish was at 2:30, then I would say less, because I'm talking about 2. That's more than 1, right? So that's something to remember when it comes to time. You technically have 2 ways, in this case, of saying the word at. You have 2 ways of saying at. You can say a la, like the one for 1 o'clock here, or you can say a las, if it's more than 1, if it's 2, if it's 3, if it's 4, if it's all the way to 12, right? So you're going to be using las way more that you will be using the la because there's only 1 hour that's allowed to use la, but all the other hours have to use las. So that's one of the grammar changes you kind of have to remember when it comes to time. The other way is, let me see if I have both versions on here. I don't think I do. If not, let me quickly, I know I'm probably making you dizzy with changing this. So, no. So I'm going to go back and show you page 105. Remember the review page I mentioned for you guys at the beginning of the last vocab video? Page 105 has all of your review. So let me scroll to the bottom of this. Here we go. To show you the difference of what I mean for how you can say it is 8:34 now because my time has changed. So, telling time, discussing daily schedule, this is basically what I'm talking about. We already talked about a la or a las, right? At blank o'clock, you tell me the time. This, like, fourth line here is what tells you how you can say it is. So, same rules. Depending on the time, you will have to choose the right version if it's 1 something or if it's past 1, if it's 2, 3, 4, all the way to 12. So If it's 110, 115, 150, it doesn't matter the minutes, right? But if it's one something, you say es la, L-A only, because it's one. It's single. If it's a lot, if it's two, if it's three, all the way to 12, that's more than one, right? So if it's 2:15, if it's 3:45, if it's 7:03, then you say son las. So you have to make sure you change it and you make it plural instead. You're going to come across these. It's okay if you don't remember how to change stuff automatically, right? This is new. We're not used to changing spelling so much in English, but it's something to remember, because if not, as you practice it, you don't want to get stuck using the wrong form, and then it doesn't sound correct when you're trying to talk to people, right? So it's okay. I'm going to work through this with you guys and remind you, but just remember there are two ways you can say at. There are two ways you can say it is. Let's see, something else to remember. I'll just work off of this page before I scroll back up to the top to show you the numbers, because we're going to talk about numbers right now. There are different ways, like I said, that you could say, I said this in the last video and in class, how you can say like 15 minutes or half an hour, or you can say like, it's not like 1 o'clock, it's 10 till 1 o'clock, like it's going to be 1 o'clock in 10 minutes. This section right here is basically what you use if you choose to use those. It's not that you need to use like y cuarto, y diez, y media, but of course we're used to using half past or a quarter till. So of course Spanish has the same options for you to use as well. So remember that these do exist. You're not forced to use them, but people do use them, so you don't want to come up and be confused if someone says like una y media and you say, wait, what time is that? So remember that these exist. They are still here. Okay, so let's talk about the numbers. Shut your eyes for a second. I'm going to scroll back up to the page we were on. And we're going to look at, technically, quite a few numbers, but you just don't exactly need to take, there we go, notes on so many of them. The good thing is that Spanish likes patterns. English doesn't always, because it can get a little confusing, but Spanish likes patterns. Once you see the pattern, it's going to be pretty easy for you to figure out how to spell a number, even if you've never actually seen it. So let's go through this. Grab some paper, something to write with if you want to take some notes. These are the numbers 11 through 100. But you're like, what? That's a little bit. That's not all of those numbers. That's not like 89 numbers. Technically, yes, but you just have to change something to make it fit correctly for the number you're using. We're starting with 11. It says once. It looks like once upon a time, but it means once. That's how you pronounce it. That's going to be the ending that you kind of use for the next couple, if you notice. So like the spelling looks a little similar. Once would be 11. Doce kind of looks like dos for 2, would be 12. Trece kind of looks like tres for 3, would be 13. Catorce doesn't look too much like 4, but it's semi there, would be the word for 14. Then things change a little bit. Quince for 15 doesn't really like to follow patterns, so that one looks a little bit different, but that's your word for 15. You might remember it if you've ever heard of a quinceañera, like a 15 that most Hispanic cultures do instead of a sweet 16, but a quinceañera, a famous 15 birthday party type celebration. Then we have the start, so not completely, but the start of the patterns you will see for like the rest of the numbers. In Spanish, you always break things down into like the numbers place. So maybe you remember back when you were doing maybe like algebra, I'm assuming. I don't even remember because it was so long ago. You learned about number tenses. So it's like the ones place, the tens place, the hundreds place, and so on, right? So let's take this number 100 right up here for an example. This first digit right here, this first number, this first 0 is in the ones place. This second 0 is in the tens place. This third number, the number 1 here, is in the hundreds place. If we had another number here, that would be the thousands place, and so on. So we're not exactly going to get to more than a hundreds place right now, or the thousands even. We're going to do that later in the year. But using that idea, ones place, tens place, hundreds place, that's how you work numbers in Spanish. So you're always going to break numbers up like that. You're going to say the tens place first, and then you're going to just kind of add on whatever extra numbers you need at the end of it here. So for example, if it was like 52, you would say, of course, the 50, and then you would say and 2, because it would be 52. It's 50 and 2 more. That's kind of what we're going to start to do here. With this 16, it doesn't really look, because one of the letters is changed, like the word for 10, but that's how you pronounce it. The way you say 16 here is 10 y 6. So how do you say 10? Think back to your numbers. 10. Originally, the word 10 is spelled with a Z, like for zebra, instead of this C right here. But you still pronounce it the same way. You say 10, E, this letter I here just says an E sound, and then 6, the number for 6, because it's 10 and 6. It's 16. Same thing for 17. 10 y 7. 10 and 7. So we can go through these and you kind of see that pattern. 10 y 8. 10 and 8. 10 y 9. 10 and 9. So the only ones you really have to remember are going to basically be your tens place. Because once you know how to say 10, 20, 30, 40, and so on, and you just keep saying 40 and 1, 40 and 2, 50 and 1, 50 and 2, and so on. So this is the new word for 20. It's pronounced 20, like a vein in your hand, in your arm, in your body. 20. So if I want to say 21, 21, 22, 23, right? So 20 and 1, 20 and 2, 20 and 3, all the way to 20 and 9, 29, and then we go to 30. So, same idea. Only thing that changes is that once you get to 30, you see how 31 has separate words now? They're like with spaces in the middle. That's the only thing that changes. So, whoops, sorry, just hit my computer. Technically, you're still doing the same pattern. You're still going to be saying the tens place, in this case, 30. And you're still going to be adding the extra numbers at the end of it. But it will actually be like a separate word now. It won't be like everything mushed together. It will be like 30 and 1, 30 and 2, and so on. So although they're not typed, you can see your pattern, and you can technically type it up on your own. I mean, you don't need to, but I'm just saying, like, you would know how to spell it. So for 30, they only give you 30 y 1, but if I wanted to do 32, I would say 30 y, and then instead of saying 1, I'd say dos, right? DOS. 30 y 3, DRES for 33, and so on. So using that same pattern, you would do the same thing when talking about 40s. 40. If I'm saying 41, 40, space, y, right? That's the letter Y, space, 1. So 3 separate words. 40 y 1. If I want to talk about 47, 40 y 7 for 7, right? Same thing for 50. If I want to say 53, I would write this, 50 y 3, 53. For 60, 60. If I want to say 67, 60 y 7. If I want to say 72, 70 y 2, right? So you kind of see the pattern here. It just depends on what you're trying to say. Let's see, 80. I just realized the book has a typo. Look at that. I never even noticed that. How funny. This should be an 80, obviously, because you're talking about 80 on this side. 80. So, 83. 83. Same pattern. 90, 90. So, 91, 91. 99, 99. And then 100 is just 100. There's no extra numbers attached to it because it's just 100. So, we're obviously talking about time, not going to be talking about like 100 or 90 or 70 or any of that. You pretty much just need to know up until 59. So, although we have all of them on here, when you talk about your schedules, like at what time do you have this class? At what time do you have lunch? At what time do you have this? You're basically just going to have to know how to say up until like 59. I have class at 7:59 or whatever time you're talking about something, right? But obviously we have the rest of the numbers to still continue practicing. So this was specifically what I wanted to cover. Time, and like the numbers and how they change in spelling depending on what you're talking about. But all of this is still on your module for you guys to continue practicing if you need to. And remember, your big review page is page 105. All right, hopefully this helps. If not, ask me for help during class. See ya.